good, guys? It's Ilsun 4K, and you know why you're here, and I know why you're here. Because you've seen it, and I've seen it. Halloween 2. Yes, as we continue onward towards the 40th anniversary celebration of the third Halloween this year, as we also celebrate my WEEN special, which is, of course, my month-long special celebrating horror movies that take place on Halloween, we absolutely have to cover Halloween 2. A sequel that, while not nearly as good as the first movie, is still a great horror movie. And to be quite honest with you, not only is it one of the probably the best sequel in the Halloween franchise, but probably one of the better overall horror movie sequels to come out, as it does pick off right where the first movie left off, the same night. It's still Halloween night, still rolling onward, although I guess since, you know, if you want to be technical about it, it's not Halloween night anymore once it passes midnight. But nonetheless, we have this movie where it's a little more centralized versus the whole town running around, and we have a big what if about Michael Myers and if he's dead, and of course that twist ending that is just so well done at the end, delivered, that nobody could have possibly seen coming. And I mean nobody, like on par with Star Wars good horror movie ending here. So I can't wait to cover this movie with you guys. So make sure you like and subscribe. It's Ilsun 4K, and we're definitely going to cover this movie, and we're going to get into the story right now. So what we get out of the story this time around is pretty cool, because ultimately the end of the story is a lot of closure and a lot of plot hole closing from the first movie that nobody could have known, even though all this information today is, of course, common sense. Even if you're not even a casual Halloween fan, you just know the things that are now common sense that were pretty much established in this movie all those years ago, the better part of 40 years ago, quite honestly. And we move onward and upward. We start the whole story out. Michael Myers has, of course, been shot out of the window by Dr. Loomis 6 times, as he mentions to the police officer, and says there's no way he could have survived, despite the fact he's not on the ground after being shot pretty much 6 times. Dr. Loomis starts looking for Michael Myers with the police officer, much like he did in the first movie. But unlike the first movie, he finds someone who looks like Michael Myers as he runs him over into the police car and crashes and crushes them. Dr. Loomis, of course, doesn't believe this is Michael Myers and has to confirm it by having his dental records checked, so he goes against the dentist. Cue up to the point that we find out that Michael Myers is in fact not dead. He's running around looking for a new weapon and actually interrupts someone's sandwich making to go and steal their knife, which is just some fucked up shit. I mean, at least he didn't kill them, but they're not finishing up that sandwich. By the way, look at that ham block. That ham block is ridiculous. Gives me heebie-jeebies just thinking about it. So Michael is now on his way to go find and kill who? Of course, Laurie Strode. Where's Laurie Strode? Well, after getting ridiculously fucked up in the first movie by Michael, including jabbed a few times, Laurie Strode is now laid out in the hospital, waiting for, recovery. Laurie Strode has a friend in the hospital who's a male nurse who comes and visits her a little too often, if you know what I mean. I mean, come on, Jamie Lee Curtis back then. Ooh, man, good lord. So Jamie Lee Curtis, has this friend Laurie has this friend who happens to visit her in the ER and all that stuff. And then we find out that, of course, Michael is one way or another putting together where Laurie Strode is and finds out where she is in the hospital, of course. So now Michael is on his way to the hospital, and Dr. Loomis has somehow confirmed that this is in fact not Michael Myers that he's run over. So they have to find out where he is. Finding out where he is a little bit of a difficult affair. So Michael Myers Dr. Loomis ends up talking to a nurse who confides to him that Laurie Strode is actually the last remaining child or person of the Myers family and has been adopted by the Strode family and had her name changed, which again was some like Luke, I am your father type shit for horror movies back then. And what an awesome little twist to throw in for this sequel, which again didn't have like the near awesomeness of the first one, but still was awesome and gave a lot of closure with that. And in the end, ultimately, of course, Michael Myers shows up to the hospital and fucks everybody up, starting with the security guard. And then one of the nurses actually gets out and tries to get away to find out her car won't start. And then after that, she finds out her tires are slashed, and then she sees everybody's car in the parking lot tires are slashed on Halloween night by Michael Myers, because he is convinced without a doubt that he's going to kill Laurie Strode. Of course, Laurie Strode ends up shoving 2 items in his eyes. I believe it's knives or something like that, if I recall, and it starts to make him bleed out. And then all of a sudden, we have Dr. Loomis show up, who starts letting gas in the room after a whole battle affair with Laurie Strode. Again, in the final battle, being the final girl, while injured, makes her even more badass. Ends up blowing him up and all that crazy shit that happens when Michael Myers gets lit on fire. It still dies. It's absolutely one of the greatest endings and twist endings that has been in a horror movie sequel in quite some time. And to be quite honest with you, that is still one of the better Halloween sequels to ever happen, in my opinion. The best Halloween sequel, if you want my opinion. So yeah, that's the story wrapped up. It's pretty, basic, but unique. And again, it's equally as thought-provoking as the first one, if you want my opinion. thought-provoking and perplexing. Maybe not as solid. I think one thing we really need to point out between, the first Halloween and the second Halloween is, the first Halloween was this, like, again, really bold and daring affair where it pushed the ideas of connectivity and the idea of having, like, a thought-provoking affair where we're like, well, why does Michael Myers want to kill Laurie Strode so badly? It doesn't make any sense. Again, nobody knew. Nobody knew for, like, 2 years or however many years it wasn't until Halloween 2 came out, right? So that's really, really interesting to think that, a horror movie left people on a cliffhanger purposely, whereas, again, something I like to talk about is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre didn't really leave anybody on a cliffhanger, and for all we know, Leatherface was arrested at the end of those videos. I thought it was really nice the way they were like, we're going to take something and make it different, because yes, you could say Laurie Strode is babysitting in the first movie and keeps her in a one area place where Michael Myers can go and get her, whereas that's not really true, because as we see, Laurie Strode actually runs around to a bunch of houses. So Laurie Strode has multiple places to run and hide in a neighborhood that she's familiar with. Again, the familiarity of it is what makes her have the upper hand against Michael when she has to have that final battle scene. She does not have any of that in this. Actually, Laurie Strode is stuck inside of the hospital and already handicapped from her first battle with Michael, which makes the whole affair of it for Michael to try and come and get her a little more centralized and encapsulating and more imprisoning, really, the best word to use. And I thought that was really, really a unique way to make the movie be different while the same, because of course you have Dr. Loomis and the police running around trying to find Michael Myers, but this time around people are saying, instead of Michael Myers isn't coming here, we've killed Michael Myers, he's dead, there's nothing to worry about. So again, there's that familiarity from the first movie of the doctor knows something and no one wants to believe him, but there's this whole unique take of Laurie Strode being in the hospital and her being safe but not really safe when Michael shows up, and how the ending is with Michael actually being blown to bits and lit on fire is a lot more dramatic than when he was shot. So you could say they really, really went for it with the final kill scene in this and having his eyes gouged out and all that stuff. The kills in this were a lot different too. They were a lot more graphic and kind of in your face. Like they were almost kind of like pre-Friday the 13th-ish type of stuff when Michael Myers shoves that woman's face into the boiling hot water. And then there's the one where he shoves the knife in the back of the girl and lifts her up. But again, we don't see that much gore in that instance, which keeps in tone with the original movie, but also tries something new and bold and daring on the makeup and effects department. And of course, the acting, the actors are pretty much the same from the first, the new hospital staff being there. That just ends up really being a body count anyway. So there's nothing to really hold accountable for there. But just seeing the impact of everything from the first movie translating to the second movie is something that we didn't get from the first movie. Everybody mourning over the fact that their kids are dead. One of the police officers' daughters is, of course, murdered. And he, goes like cold shock and says he has to get home and tell his wife before anybody else does. And everyone tells him to go home. Again, we see more of the impact, and what happened in the first movie mattered beyond Michael Myers just getting shot and Dr. Loomis still pursuing. I thought it was really, really clever of them to do that, to not insult the audience's intelligence and try and make it so linear, even though it is kind of, it's a linear path because it's right after the first one, but the storyline is not so linear. And also you got to remember, apparently this was the beginning of the end of them thinking Michael Myers was going to work. So they wanted to kill off Michael Myers so that way they can make the third movie, which of course is 40 years old, and I have, 40th anniversary video coming out, so make sure you check that out this weekend. The third movie was supposed to be an anthology series, and they wanted to do something different and phase Michael Myers out. They thought Michael Myers ran his course, which, if you want my opinion, he did for a while, and the idea of a new movie was cool, but that's a whole thing I'll talk about in the third anniversary. But again, I was really a fan of the differences between the two, and they did a really good job of making it so that you could differentiate between the two, because I think they definitely knew there was no way they could top the first, but that didn't mean they had to give up on the second. And that's pretty much how a lot of people feel about it, to my understanding. And really, that's my take on Halloween 2. I'm not gonna lie, I'm actually a really big fan of Halloween 2. I'm a big fan of the first two Halloweens. My interest in them wanes off starting around 4 and going all the way up until probably Halloween 2020 or 2019, whatever that one was called. But that again tells you, I can't even remember the name of it because I just had to cipher through so many different goddamn names. But Halloween 1 and 2 is always going to be one of my favorites. Halloween 3 is actually going to be my favorite more than a lot of the Halloweens after it. Probably, like I said, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of them. But Halloween 2 was such a pivotal moment for horror movies because it really took the idea of taking something from a first movie and stretching it out into another realm and making you really think even more than the first movie did. Because at first you kind of wrote a lot of things off from the first film as your whole well, it's a horror movie, you don't have to think about it, don't worry about it, But there's actually a lot of meaning there and a lot of understanding. And something that, you know, Halloween 2 did was really help lay down the lore hardcore. Because you got to remember, nobody knew that Laurie Strode was Michael Myers' sister. And after that, it was just common knowledge not too long after that. And it became so much part of the lore and the mythos and everything about it, right to the day right now where Jamie Lee Curtis still plays that character fantastically. Laurie Strode in modern day films makes so much sense from all the trauma she went through now. And to see an actress be able to reprise her role like that and still remember this scene and make you remember all the shit she went through in that one day between two movies, it's just so believable when you see Halloween 2 and see how much further it really went for her after she had to escape from this whole ordeal and thought she was done, but she really wasn't. And there's not a whole lot of horror movies that really were doing that at the time. And while that might be a little bit more commonplace now, and you know, movies are made with the idea of multiple sequels being in place already and contracts and knowing how to do projected numbers, Halloween was at a time where none of that was possible. And they really banked on Halloween 2. And of course, while it did not compare to the first Halloween, it's an absolute classic. And I just, no way you can miss it. It's completely undeniable to miss this movie. It's a crime, a sin, as much as missing the first one. So again, guys, thanks for joining me on this Horrorween special, which is, of course, my month-long celebration of horror movies that take place on Halloween. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We got a bunch more coming out. Of course, I have Halloween 3 40th anniversary video coming out. Make sure you catch me at 9 p.m. on twitch.tv/ilsun4k for the Total Terror-a-thon Thursdays. And then make sure you catch me streaming late night, 10:30 p.m. on the Total Slasher-thon, I don't know, 10:30 Saturday night p.m. affairs. We're doing that. Man, I'm fucking this up. Anyway, 10:30 Saturday night. Make sure you're there for my Twitch. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe to the channel. It's ilsun4k.